Good morning and welcome to Community Roundtable, a free public service brought to you on AM 1590 KDJS. If you're a member of a nonprofit organization and would like to be featured on the program, call the KDJS Newsline at 320-235-2900. That's 320-235-2900.
This is Community Roundtable. Al Sheldon here, AM 1590 and FM 105.7. Regular Sunday morning program, always fun to chat. You never know who we're going to have in the studio. And we're going to talk a little military, a little book writing, and a lot of experience today. Dal Allen is here, and Dal's got a book, Bullets and Badges. And it's an interesting read. I have not gotten all the way through it yet. We're talking on a little bit of short notice here, but I like that because we'll just chat and find out about your career, your life, and an interesting one it was, being a corpsman. And what branch of military again, Del?
United States Navy.
In the Navy. All
yeah,
right.
But I was attached to the Marine Corps as well.
Mm-hmm. Specifically, you were in Vietnam. You're a Vietnam veteran.
That's correct.
All right. Let's talk about getting started in life, first of all. Where'd you go to school? Where do you live?
I was born in Wadena, Minnesota, and I was raised in Otter Tail County. The county seat is Fergus Falls, on a very modest dairy farm.
What year did you graduate from high school?
1965.
65. In 1965, I would have been 10 years old.
I was draft age.
Yeah, you were exactly that era for you had to go to the post office, I'm guessing, to get your number?
That's correct.
Yeah. I graduated in 73. I had a number, and the war ended in March of 73, as we know it ended anyway, and did not get drafted. What I remember about 1965 and the year you signed up was the first time a casualty hit home for our town with a young man who had gone to Vietnam and lost his life, and that was 1965. And it's funny how those things stick with you, but it'll never go away.
That's true.
You know?
It doesn't.
Man, what was it like being drafted? Did you get a call, a letter? What happened?
What happened is after high school, I decided to get a job in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and I got a call from the MnDOT, Minnesota Department of Transportation, because I had taken a civil service exam, and they wanted to interview me for a job. And I thought, what a deal, you know. So I interviewed, and he asked me if I had heard from the draft, and I said, no, I hadn't heard a thing. He said, I'd hate to hire you and lose you right away. Mm-hmm. So he said, let me do some checking. Well, about 10 days later, so I get a official-looking envelope from the Minnesota Department of Transportation that said you'll be working for the government, but not Minnesota. That's how I knew I was going to get drafted.
Wow. Wow. Was it scary?
It was a little scary because my father was Army Infantry World War II in the South Pacific. And although he never talked about it, there was some memorabilia that he had kind of around the house that I would sit and admire, you know, from time to time. And so I had a little bit of a feeling. Of course, we were watching Huntley Brinkley in the news at night, you know. And so we had a taste, you know, of what was going on.
Not like it is today, by a long shot.
No, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's crazy the way it is now, as far as I'm concerned, anyway. But yeah, having family in the military, I had a brother who was in the Army, an uncle in the Air Force, another uncle who was Marine and Army. He was in 4 years with one, 4 years was up. He thought, well, I'm going to go try this now, and served in Korea. And my other uncle was dated back toward World War II. Due to health issues, he was not combat. But thanks to his brain, he worked a lot in helping develop certain radar things. And wound up, I think, where he ended up, Colonel, if I remember right. Yeah, well, you think back to those days. You talk about memorabilia around the house. I'd go up into our attic, and there would be things from my uncle. I'd see his helmet from Korea and different pins and stuff. Just got kind of set on a shelf and put aside. Your family, the things brought back from family members who had served, what kind of things are sitting around your house?
Well, my father had a full Army uniform, with all his medals and ribbons and stripes and stuff on it. And I kind of caught a few little bits and pieces of conversations and stuff. He was wounded on the island of Leyte in the Philippines by a Japanese sniper. Survived his wounds, then came back and settled on a small Minnesota farm.
Oh, and you go back to the day of being drafted. How long before you went to boot camp, so to speak?
Well, I didn't get drafted, actually. What happened is I knew I was going to get drafted, so I decided to enlist. I didn't want to take my chances, really. My father encouraged me to not go in the infantry. So I went up to the Fergus Falls recruiting office, and the first recruiting office I came to was the United States Navy, and I said, I'd like to enlist. So I thought that was a good choice.
How'd you pick Navy?
It wasn't because I picked Navy. It was because I didn't pick. I didn't pick the Marine Corps or the Army.
Okay.
And the first one I came to was the Navy guy, so that's what I picked.
All right. Wow. Where'd you go to camp at to get training and everything before you went overseas?
Yeah, my basic training actually right after I enlisted was in San Diego, California. And because I enlisted as a hospital corpsman recruit, I was guaranteed I would go to hospital corps school in San Diego after I got out of the basic training. So that's what I did. I went there and got my training, and then I was going to get orders, of course, to my next duty station. It turned out to be Camp Pendleton, California.
Had you traveled much before then?
I don't think I ever got out of Minnesota.
What was that like?
It was an adventure. Yeah, it's an eye-opener.
I'll bet. How long there then before going to Vietnam?
Well, I went to Camp Pendleton Naval Hospital. Camp Pendleton did have a naval hospital because it's a huge Marine Corps base, and actually the Marines are actually part of the Department of the Navy. Mm-hmm. So I was there for about 6 months, and then they called me to the personnel office and asked me if I would sign up for sea duty. In the Navy, you have shore duty and sea duty alternately. And I said, sure, I'll sign up for that. So I signed up for some dreams, 6th Fleet and 7th Fleet and hospital ships, and I got my orders to 1st Marine Division, Vietnam. And that's how that happened.
Wow. It's a crazy experience. A half hour is not going to be long enough for us to sit here and talk. I know that right now, and we're 7 minutes into the program. Jump ahead here a little bit. How did you decide to write a book? A lot of guys don't talk about their overseas military things that happen. They kind of keep things quiet, You've got a book you've written called Bullets and Bandages.
Bullets and Bandages, yeah. Yes. Well, you're exactly right. My father really never talked about his experiences in World War II also. And I had pretty much reconciled that part of my life. My son asked me if I had kept a diary while I was overseas. And to tell you the truth, I really never gave it much of a thought because I never thought I would survive. So what was the point, But I had a box of pictures. So I laid these pictures out on banquet tables and started looking at them and recalling what those pictures were, and then sitting down and writing about each picture. It was about a 2-year process, And
it was on your own or with the help of somebody? Or?
No, just on my own.
Okay.
Yep, on a laptop. So what ended up happening is it was just a story, and I just let it go at that. I never intended to publish it at all.
Interesting to have some thoughts down, and in paging through some of the book, you've got those pictures in there that you were mentioning. That's got to bring back some unique memories, hopefully good memories, the guys you were with,
Well, yeah, it does, and I've kind of reconciled that whole part of my life. Mm-hmm. I did not know really how sitting down and writing about it was going to affect me. You don't know what the consequences are going to be.
Yeah.
But it was all right. I've kind of gotten past that.
Being a corpsman, describe what you're doing in Vietnam. Are you up there obviously helping people? Is the lead still flying? What's going on,
Well, of course, there are a lot of duty stations. Some corpsmen work at a hospital in a major city. I'm talking about a military hospital. Myself, I was with the 1st Marine Division Alpha Company, and I was out in the rice paddies in the jungle I was kind of the first response trauma specialist, and so I had to take training for triage. Sometimes you had to decide who you could help and who you couldn't.
Yeah.
Which is a tough decision when you're 20 years old.
It's tough when you're 60.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. How long were you in Vietnam then?
1 year.
1 year. Okay. Yep. Did it fly by?
No, not really. It seemed like it kind of drug by in a way, although we were kept very, very busy. Actually, the last week seemed like a month, because you knew you had maybe 5-7 days before you were going to jump on that bird and go home, and it seemed like an eternity.
So many questions, and I hope I'm asking the right questions here. I mean, you're on the front line, so to speak, doing the triage and out in the rice paddies. You ever look the enemy in the eye, so to speak, or?
I tried not to. There was a few times, of course, that happened, especially during the Tet Offensive of 1968. There was a very, very large offensive push by the North Vietnamese, and they were right outside our wire a lot of times.
Was that probably one of the crazier times you had in that 1 year then, or?
I think so. Yeah, it was very active. Very active. I had a lot to do.
What part of Vietnam?
I was straight west of Da Nang, which is part of I Corps. We almost got sent up to Hue City when that was taken over by the North Vietnamese. But then somebody would have had to take our place to protect the Da Nang Air Base, and then somebody would have had to take the place of people taking our place. So it becomes a domino effect. Yeah.
So as you're traveling with the troops, obviously, I'm guessing you're carrying a weapon. I mean, I would.
I was authorized to carry a .45 sidearm. My sergeant authorized me to carry a rifle as well, and that's not why I was there. I was there to help people who have been wounded or ill. But he wanted me to look just like the person in front of me and just like the person behind me. And the reason is because the snipers would pick somebody out that looked a little bit different. High-value kills were the corpsman and the radio man and the squad leader. And that's where they went after. So if I looked different than the person in front of me or behind me, they'd get me.
Wow. Man, things you don't know as a person in my shoes, obviously. I mean, to hear about... I'm envisioning jungle, dirt roads, gravel roads. Am I right?
Well, where I was, I didn't see any asphalt at all. The only concrete there was the tarmac, of course, in Da Nang, because that was a big air base in Da Nang. It was dirt roads, little banana plantations, villages, mama son, papa son. Well, not too many papa sons because they only came out at night.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Are you 24/7 on call when you're there for a year? Do you get some downtime where you can lay back a little bit? Or
I did get some respite time. I was actually lucky enough to see the Bob Hope show, and excuse me.
Yeah.
I did get a week out of country, which was called R&R. So
out of the country meaning?
Well, you had different places that you could select. You could select Japan. Manila, Australia, Taipei, different ones like that.
It's funny you mentioned Bob Hope. I met him in about 1980 during an event in central Iowa. He was friends with the Dwight Eisenhower family. And Ike's wife was born in the town I worked in, and they were dedicating her house as a museum. And Bob Hope is a friend of the family. He came to the event.
Yeah.
It was very cool. I can't imagine seeing the whole show as you did. Was he with anyone else or just Bob Hope alone?
No, he was with Les Brown, his band of renown.
Okay, yeah.
And he was also with a troop favorite, Raquel Welch.
Can't imagine why Raquel would be a troop favorite now. What did they do? A lot of song and dance, comedy? What did Raquel do?
Well, of course, Bob Hope was little zingers, one-liners,
Oh, yeah.
And then the band was painted in the background. Raquel Welch come up in her fur two-piece that she wore in some movie that she was in. And she was dancing up there, and then pretty soon she asked, she said, I need somebody to help me dance. And about the first 5 rows of troops piled up on stage.
She was in a Caveman movie.
Yeah, 2000
it
BC.
Had to be probably the outfit from that movie. That's what all the guys would remember her. And I think, you can't miss that.
I know, yeah.
Oh, gosh. Well, that's amazing you think back. It sounds to me, Del, talking with Del Allen, by the way, and you do live in Wilmer now, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. Talking with Del about a book called Bullets and Bandages that he has written, Vietnam Experience, and in the studio here with us today, for those of you just maybe tuning in. That's got to be a highlight. I mean, when a bunch of guys can catch a break and catch a show like that.
Oh, it really is. Yeah, it really is. Some people, too, got a little in-country 1 or 2 days to a place called China Beach, just to relax a little bit. Although you never really could relax.
I don't think so.
Not really.
China Beach. Now, there was a TV show named China Beach about that area, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. That was, boy, I'm dating myself here, but that's probably back in the 1980s, too, isn't it?
I think so.
Somewhere in that range. Gosh. People you mention in the book, do you stay in touch with any of the guys?
I do not. I don't know exactly why. I've thought about these guys a lot, but I've never really stayed in touch with them.
A friend of ours here at our radio station, Steve, met you at a local service club, the VFW, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, you're a member of the VFW, obviously, I'm guessing.
Yes, I am.
A lot of guys your age yet able to hang out there. And do you talk about things like this, or are you just into today's life and nothing about the past?
Well, the past occasionally will come up in normal conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, it doesn't. We just go down there for the unspoken camaraderie that we have. We're kind of like a band of brothers. And a lot of people probably think like the military clubs and stuff are filled with old men in funny hats. But it's not that way really at all.
No, not really. They're open to the public.
That's correct.
And trying to, I know, I don't want to use the word recruit, but they would like to see younger members come in and make that a club for them as well. The people from basically the Middle East nowadays, of course, that have served.
I have seen the change since I've been there. I was coming in there as a Vietnam veteran, and there were World War II members and there were Korean members, and pretty soon there were less and less of them, and not as many of us because we didn't really feel all that welcome to begin with. So there was a lot of us that just kind of said, don't need that. But those of us that did join and participate, I was commander 3 different times. We'd like to see some of the younger vets step up because we're going to be gone here in about 20 years or so.
Mm-hmm. You don't see many World War II guys around. Time has gone by.
Yeah, it has. It really has, yeah.
And you mentioned the less than welcoming nation as you guys returned from Vietnam. That had to be tough. Did you feel any of that backlash or whatever you want to call it?
Probably not as much as some. I came to rural Minnesota, which probably was not a hotbed of protesting,
Yeah.
But when we flew into California on the way home, we noticed it, and we were advised that maybe we should get into some civilian clothes as soon as we could because they weren't very forthright and kind to the veteran coming back.
Yeah, I sometimes just shake my head when I think about stuff like that. What can you do? I mean, people have the right to protest, but some people maybe get carried away a little bit too much.
I agree. And there was a bumper sticker back then that probably said it all, and it was kind of the veterans' reaction to those people who pretty much disrespected their service, and that was America, love it or leave it.
Mm-hmm. A few did leave. Most did not, and maybe as they've gotten older, they understand a little more now. Gosh, I don't know. Bullets and Bandages. How'd you come up with the name? To me, it seems pretty obvious, but was there something different that made you think of that? Did you have any other titles you wanted to call the book, or?
Well, I picked Bandages because I couldn't use a brand name.
Yeah. Band-Aid.
I couldn't use a Band-Aid,
Right,
so it had to be bandages. I also thought about battle dressings because that's basically what we use. We use the battle dressings. So I put down on paper, just a handful or so of different possibilities. And then, of course, my publisher took a look at those and he goes, I like that one. Mm-hmm. And so that's how that happened.
That when you've got somebody supporting you, that helps a lot in the decision. You know, no ifs, ands, or buts. A good deal as far as getting the help. When you came back to Minnesota, then did you right back to the Wadena area or the Otter Tail County area?
Yeah, I did. I came back to the small, modest little dairy farm, and I struggled quite a bit because in World War II, and probably even Korea too, it took time from the time you left the battlefield till the time that you arrived on your soil. It took a long time. My dad came back on a ship, got on a train, so there was a cooling down type period. Vietnam, I got on a plane, and the next day I was in California. The next day after that, I was home. And so there was very little cooling down. So I had a really difficult time sleeping. Everything was way too quiet, you know. So I struggled a little bit with just environmental kind of trying to get my feet underneath me, kind of.
I imagine you get back here. Do you ever wake up and think you're still overseas? You go, whoa, wait a minute, I'm home now. You got to shake your head a little bit, or?
Not anymore. No.
But back then.
Back then.
When you first came back, I can imagine the quietness. Well, you're in Vietnam. You're trying to get some sleep. What are you hearing? The constant guns, machines, trucks, and tanks. What are you hearing? You know.
When I first got there, some of the old veterans, and some of them were actually on their second tour. By that I mean they've been there over 1 year, and they would just say, "Well, when you're here for a while, you'll get used to the sounds. You'll know the difference between outgoing shooting and incoming." And I went, "That sounds the same, but it really doesn't." You know. And
what is the difference?
Well, the difference is when it's coming toward you, and especially if it gets close to you. It snaps and crackles, kind of like Rice Krispies and fresh milk.
Okay.
You just don't want to hear the pop, you know. So
that'd be a little too close.
Yeah.
Oh man, did they get that close to you?
Oh yeah, they did. Yeah.
No injuries ever suffered or anything. Or?
I got just a little piece of a shard of metal in my right index finger between my middle knuckle and my first knuckle, and that's it.
A shard of metal from shrapnel?
From explosion.
Okay.
From shrapnel.
So can you get through an airport metal detector okay nowadays? Then?
Oh yeah, no problem.
I just think of a friend of mine with artificial hip.
Oh yeah.
And he's got the doctor's card, but they still pull him aside. Even though here's the card, here's what I have. Oh, you have to come over here, you know. Gosh. Where's the book available at? Can people purchase this just directly from you? Another outlet anywhere too, or?
Yes. First, let me just say that I never planned on publishing this. Mm-hmm. And we were walking down the street in Lake Havasu City, Arizona, here in 2015-16, and they have a flea market. And so my wife says, "I think you should go talk to this guy over here in this tent." And I said, "Why?" And she said, "I think he's a publisher." And I said, "Really?" So I walked over and visited with him. He was an author and a publisher. And I told him I had something that I'd put down in print, but I didn't know really if I wanted to do anything with it. And he said, "I'd like to see it." And so I gave it to him, and he called me back and said, "Meet me at Starbucks." And I met him at Starbucks. I had a cup of coffee, and he said, "You got to do something with this." And so that's how it got published. Mm-hmm. I had to polish it up a little bit. It was pretty rough. And I will say that it's not a Sunday school story. I mean, people understand that this is combat, and it's not pretty. Mm-hmm. So there's some rough language, and there's some rough scenes in there. And if you're okay with that, if you're okay with reality, I didn't sugarcoat a thing. But you can get this actually from me personally, or the best way to get it probably is at the VFW here in Wilmer. And there'll be books there available. And excuse me, the staff there will make sure you get one when you come in. They're $15, and it's a good story. It's a good read.
Very, very reasonable. I'm looking forward. I've got an opportunity this week to spend some downtime myself. My wife and I are doing what we call a camping work vacation at a local park to where instead of being at the house, you end up doing stuff, and all we're doing is getting home to the campsite by the lake and kicking back. So now I have something to read.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah. Like it says on the back of the book here, nonfiction, history, a little bit of everything enrolled in here, including the personal side of a Willmar resident and a native of Minnesota, which is really cool. I think people will enjoy, like you say, even though it's not a sugarcoat, and at $15 you can't beat the price.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
Gosh, how many copies do you have made up?
Well, I could get as many printed as I want to, really. Usually they come in 50-book increments, so it's like a 50 or 100 or 150. Yeah. I just get a hold of the printer, and they'll print them up and just send it to me. So, yeah, there's no problem getting plenty of them. They're also available on Amazon.
Okay.
Amazon, of course, takes the $15. But that process I learned real quickly.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's more fun doing what we're doing here and meeting the author and being able to. Anybody can meet you or go down to the VFW club, and if you're not there, like I say, they'll take care of the business for you.
That's true. And if I'm there, I'll be happy to sign it for you.
What kind of camera were you using on these photos then?
Just a little pocket Kodak. Yeah, and
film developing right there where you were at. Somebody take care of that, or
no? What I would do is I would put it in an envelope and I'd send it home to my folks, and my mother would take it in and have it developed in the local Photoshop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When you're down to that last week before coming home, to me that would be so tenuous because you're counting days, you're counting the hours. I'd be keeping my head down, I guess. Got
a little paranoid. I did. There was so many instances of people coming into country and being killed on the first day there, and then especially getting ready to go home and not quite making it the last few days.
Yeah.
They still went home, but not the way they planned on going home. So yeah, a person gets kind of paranoid, and I certainly did. I mean, I was actually supposed to go out to Charlie Company because they had run into an ambush. I think they had 3 days left in country, and 5 corpsmen were killed that night.
Wow.
And so I was supposed to go back out to Charlie Company with 3 days left in country, and I said, I don't think so. And I had the backing of the battalion surgeon, so I didn't have to go out.
With what you're talking about here, that is just amazing and scary and all rolled into one. There's so many feelings that the emotions that you must have been going through. I mean, gosh.
Yeah, there was. It's an eye opener for a lot of people, but a lot of people tell me that when they pick it up, they can't put it down. Mm-hmm. It's something they have to. It's a page turner.
Something to check out because, like we said at the top of the show, a lot of guys just come home and don't say anything.
That's true.
And they try to move on.
Yeah.
And to have something to read about, and like I mentioned, for me, this was my first war/conflict, whatever you want to label it as.
Yeah.
To me, it's a war.
The bullets are the same.
Yeah, they're flying.
Yeah.
This goes back to me growing up, and a lot of people I think are going to feel that way. I think too. Gosh, I'm looking at our time here. Like I say, we can keep talking for a long time, but the boss says we're done in a half hour. So, tip of the iceberg here. But people want to talk to you. Gosh, if they're down at the VFW, stop in for dinner or after work, happy hour. And check the book out, visit with you if you're there. I encourage people to do that,
So do I. Yeah, so do I. It would be available there, and you'll see I'll have some posters put up. And actually our manager, Lydia, there will have all the information on a TV screen. And so it'll be easy to find. That's on East Highway 12 here in Willmar.
East Highway 12, yeah. We broadcast some of their specials on a weekly basis.
That's true.
The book is called Bullets and Bandages. It's Dal Allen, and written the book, lives here in Willmar. And again, we appreciate you getting up, spending some time with us here on this early side of the day, Dal.
Hey, I really enjoyed it, Al. Nice to be with you.
We'll have to do this again. Dal Allen once again with us here on KDJS, Gold Country 1590, 105.7.
You've been listening to Community Roundtable, a free public service brought to you on AM 1590.